this ceasefire proposal with political analyst Ronnie Chatah now live from Beirut. Ronnie, thank you very much for your time. First of all, I did want to start with what I just finished with there. That there are reports that Israel has a side agreement with the US, allowing it to take action in Lebanon against so-called imminent threats. How murky a territory is this from Lebanon's point of view? Is it seen as a potential violation of the country's sovereignty here?
I think it's two things. First, yes, it is a violation of sovereignty indeed, in that the Lebanese state doesn't have full agency to monitor its borders. It does not have the tools necessary to enforce what was put into 1701 already, let alone the enforcement mechanism that allows the Lebanese state to ask for additional support from UNIFIL. The Lebanese state has not done so. In essence, a violation of sovereignty, yes. The other end of the story, of course, is that this is the enforcement mechanism that everyone's been talking about since 2006, when 1701 went into effect, meaning if the Lebanese army and UNIFIL and the Lebanese state are unable to address what is at the end of the day Iran's security leverage in Lebanon, then unfortunately for us, there is side talk of Israeli-American, let's say, mechanism and enforcement. The details have not been drawn out to do that, not on Lebanon's terms, but on Israel's terms. And that's the tragic story at play in Lebanon, is that the Lebanese state was absent this round. The Lebanese state was battered the last 20 years. The last 2 decades, the Lebanese state has been paralyzed by Hezbollah's interference and by Iranian dominion, not just in Lebanon, but the region. So you're seeing really at the end of the day what the Lebanese state looks like in 2024, going into 2025, a battered, paralyzed, ineffective state, unable to do what any country should be able to do, which is to monitor its borders and have no sub-state militia interfering in that story. Unfortunately, that's not the story we're being handed, and diplomacy is not interested in tackling that story as of now. Quite the contrary, this seems to be a stabilization effort that's so familiar. I want to just add something here. I know I'm taking your time, and I want to emphasize that today has been a nightmare for anyone in this country. Beirut has been hit so many times, and where I'm talking to you, I've heard every single explosion, and actually one of the threatening buildings that's being listed by the Israelis is very close to my mom's home. I'm on the phone with her. I'm talking to friends that live just a few kilometers away from where I am, running away and fleeing. There are so many Lebanese fleeing terror right now, belligerent Israeli bombardment. This is exactly what happened on August 13, 2006. Hours before the ceasefire went into effect the following morning, we had the worst phase of the war, and then overnight a ceasefire goes into effect, and then victory is claimed from both sides, and Lebanon loses. I fear that that's what's happening, an end to the current nightmare and a hopelessness for Lebanon long term.
So, Ronnie, Israel, as you were describing there, it's struck central Beirut. They're the first central Beirut evacuation warnings that we're hearing. Chaotic scenes unfolding there as large numbers attempt to flee. Why, in your opinion, has Israel chosen to strike Beirut with its largest simultaneous attack so far, just hours before a potential ceasefire agreement is reached?
I think it's several reasons, and this also extends to the symbolism of the Israeli soldiers posting photos of the Litani River. The fact is, there are Israeli soldiers in Lebanon that have made it all the way to that river. They've been sharing photos the last few hours. And also the Israeli flags being draped all over buildings in southern Lebanon. Add to that, the Israelis able to bomb hours before the ceasefire goes into effect. And I believe Netanyahu is going to speak maybe in 40 minutes or so, 8 p.m. Beirut time. I think this is just the last phase. And this is what happens in these wars, is that everyone settles every last score that can be settled before the ceasefire goes into effect. I sense that the familiarity is not just real, but it shows you what stability looks like for Lebanon. Tomorrow morning, we'll wake up with the stability returning to the country, but no resolution to what is happening in Lebanon at large, which is Lebanon is a battlefield right now on Iran's terms. That story, preventing any further war from Lebanon, any regional war being fought in Lebanon, that's not being addressed. That requires aggressive diplomacy. It's not happening. On the contrary, everyone is leaning towards stability and a status quo that Lebanon is familiar with. And I'll add one more thing. It's not just 18 years since 2006 when Lebanon was crippled. Thousands of Lebanese died 18 years ago in a similar scenario. We're 34 years after the civil war ended, and Lebanon is a war zone. We're 24 years after the Israelis left South Lebanon. We're also 19 years since the Syrian army exited the country, yet we're still a war zone. No country can handle this kind of pressure long term. I fear in the near to medium term, you're going to see things happening in this country that are very, very bad for local Lebanese affairs because the issue has not been solved. There is still a sub-state paramilitary force in this country. It remains a very sophisticated one and a capable militia. The disarmament of Hezbollah is not being discussed. I think short of that, you're going to see an inevitable return to some form of violence that hurts Lebanon.
Ronnie, as ever, we really appreciate your assessment and thank you for your time. Ronnie Chatah, live there from Beirut.